Welcome back into the second video in our chess story series. Today, I was thinking we finally get to the world champions and one world champion in particular who happens to be my favorite. His name is Tigran Vartanovich Petrosian. Petrosian was known as the Iron Tiger, and he liked to squeeze his opponents like a python until their pieces had no squares left. Their pawns couldn't move anywhere, their pieces were stuck until they ran out of moves, as you will see in this game. Who was Petrosian's victim in this game? Well, we actually have Simon Webb, who was a grandmaster from England. And we'll see that in this game, unfortunately, Simon didn't get off to a great start, gave away the center, and got squeezed by Black's scary space advantage. Okay, let's start off with the first move, which is the English opening, also known as c4, attacking the center and saying, can I have these squares, please? Later on, my knight will help out, get d5, e4, and you're in real trouble. Then I'm not going to put any pawns in the middle right away because I'll decide on them later. Whether Eric or Derek should move up remains to be seen. So Petrosian says, you want these squares? So do I. What a coincidence. How about I go get them? And Simon says, no. How about I go get them with the bishop? And how about you can stick to the dark squares and give the light squares to me? And Petrosian says, no, 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 no. I'll get the light squares and I'll put pawns in the way of your bishop so he can never see the light of day. The bishop comes out anyways to put pressure on the center, and so we have a battle of pawns versus pieces because Petrosian has the pawn in the middle, but the white bishop is firing at it. And in the meantime, the pawn is well guarded. It's not a problem. It's got two defenders. But one day, maybe it could be a problem if the queen comes out and the knight puts pressure on d5. In the actual game, Simon was scared about e5 because why not castle and why not stop Eric from coming in? And he should have stuck to that thought. He should have kept that in mind because later on, next turn, something very strange happened. Maybe he didn't have his coffee. Maybe he didn't get a good night's sleep, but for some reason, he forgot about the center and simply castled. He forgot that the knight could actually defend e5 and help the pawn get the full center. Now, you know, when I teach, especially when it was in person, I would like to give candy and prizes to whoever got both pawns in the middle like this. Because not only are they taking all this space, they're also well guarded. The knights are doing a great job of protecting them and supporting them, saying, go, push them away from us. And so Black is doing a great job here. Finally, Simon wakes up a little too late and says, whoa, 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 where are you going? I'm going to stop you. I have to stop your pawns. Let's trade. Let's trade. I'll play d4. You'll take my pawn. I'll take back. You take me. I take you. I destroy your center. I attack your pawn. It's all alone by itself, also known as isolated. Then the rook will come and help, and so will the knight, and you're losing, world champion, says White. Unfortunately for him, Tigran had no intention of taking and just pushes. He kicks away the chimney knight, and the chimney knight has to go to the middle instead of protecting the king. The chimney knight can be annoying on e5 as well, especially if we take. But why would I take? I don't need to take. If I take, he kicks away my chimney and puts pressure on d5. Instead, how about I ask you to take me? We only trade on our terms. If you want to trade with me, you take my horsey. I'll take you back. I make a long pawn chain. I bury your bishop at home. And now the rock eater on g2 will be looking at these rocks for the rest of his life and wondering why he ever got buried in this cave. White said, what about I help the knight? We're not going to trade. We're just going to keep it as is. And Black just castled, said, let's finish developing. Knight c3 makes a lot of sense. And white just wants to put pressure on the center. He's dreaming about maybe one day queen b3 when d4 is well guarded, maybe with e3, queen b3 in mind. Then the rook comes to the open highway. Then, maybe we'll get to win this pawn. The pawn chain falls, the bishop comes out, and life is great. But no, Tigran will get rid of the knight. He'll ask it to go away, and there aren't enough helpers. Simon is probably wishing there was a pawn here instead of the bishop, because the bishop can't keep the knight here forever. Eventually, he has to take, even though he doesn't want to help the center, he doesn't want to get this wedge looking at the bishop, but he has to. And unfortunately for white, he also has to trade off the good bishop on f4 and keep the caved-in bishop on g2. This is what we call the clamp. It's a perfect tool against fianchettoed bishops, the bishops who are in their house. He's helping the king, but that's it. That's all he's doing. Okay? At this point, white said, maybe I can attack this pawn, which is kind of backwards. He's kind of lagging behind, maybe. But no, it's okay. You can attack our backwards pawn as long as I checkmate your king. Okay? You can have my pawn, and I'll get to your king. You'll say, Mr. Mike, that's not how we play chess. Why are we pushing side pawns again? We were always taught that the center is important. But the center acts like a trump card. Whenever you have a trump card, you can get away with almost anything. You can play however you like, especially when they have a hook that you can latch onto. When they have a fianchetto bishop, very often the pawn gets into that house, into those holes, and tries to bury the poor bishop. Okay, we're not opening the king because how will they ever get to my king? How will they ever break my roof? What, will the queen teleport herself with the help of the rook and checkmate me? I don't think so. At this point, Simon says, maybe the queen can do something? Nah, Petrosian doesn't care. He's just coming for h3. He's just coming to bury the bishop and checkmate using something called a nail pawn. White's queen said, maybe I can checkmate you all by myself, but that's not how chess works. You need more than one attacker. Pawn comes all the way to h3 and buries the bishop. Finally, Simon has to say sorry and go all the way back home to h1, where the bishop takes out the king's only square. The king is suffocating. The python of Petrosian is doing his job. The python is squeezing all of white's pieces. Queen b4. While that queen is far, far away in another country, we're going to come for this country. We're going to come for all the pawns they've abandoned. The queen was supposed to be guarding them, but not anymore. So we come for the weakest link. This is called the weakest link. Whatever is not connected. This guy's connected. That guy's connected. These guys are all connected except for him and him. So we come for them. Queen has to run back, and we put more pressure. Notice how Petrosian always takes out the worst piece. If there is one rook who's not doing his job, that will change soon. Okay? You can say, what about the bishop? The bishop's not working. Yeah, the bishop's working. The bishop's job is to help the pawn. The bishop's job is to work from home. As long as the rooks can always talk to each other and help each other, then why does the bishop need to move? If you move him, sometimes he'll get hurt. He's better off working from home half of the time. Okay, so that's why he left the bishop on c8 and starts pressuring the b pawn. Here we have knight g4, and already Petrosian is up to no good. Already he's using a nail pawn. He's got a nail in white's house. He nailed the poor king, and he's coming for e3 to land another nail to get the knight even closer so he can start looking for checkmate. At this point, the king has no squares, so any check is a mate. Okay. The queen decided, wait, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to be the hero. But the queen already did enough damage to white. The queen cannot stop everything herself. Maybe he wanted to play e3. Maybe. But you know, it's very hard to play that move and make more holes. This is what I like to call Swiss cheese. And I'm sure Black was dreaming about all the cheese he can get as the bishop comes into those holes. Maybe the queen will come in one day and use those squares. Okay, so at that point, White decided on the queen instead, and we got the rook coming in. Okay, the rook is coming in to help the E pawn, help the F pawn, and also to help the queen because the queen was babysitting and Tigran didn't like that. At this point, Black could actually say hi to this pawn, win the pawn, run away, push the two pawn teeth, and the two pawn teeth will keep going and going and going until they promote. They're very hard to stop if no one's in their way. White was probably thinking about e3, but out of nowhere, it turns out the queen is trapped. It turns out that we have the very cute f6, g5, and bye-bye queen, who's got no squares. And that's why it was time for desperation. Because if you don't play e3, I'm coming for e3, and I'm coming for your pawn. So at this point, White took desperate measures, gave away the piece, tried to free the bishop who was buried by the wedge pawns, by the clamp on e4, and who was buried by my nail pawn, making his king's life hard. Okay. And now we just take out the pieces. We got extra ice cream, we got extra material. Now we can just take out pieces and trade everything off. Go to a nice end game. White didn't want to take because that was the pride of his position. So he tried to bring in the rook, dreaming about some checkmate on the black king. But Tigran just laughs it off and says, no, no checkmate for you. I'm gonna trade off any attackers. We're going to an end game. Just resign now, and I'll offer free analysis. Okay, instead, White tries for tricks. White now takes the pawn, and Black decides to take the rook. He could have also taken the bishop, but then the knight is hanging and things are a bit less clear. So that's why we got rid of the rook first. And if pawn takes, then life is very simple because we just take the queen, pick up the bishop, and we're up the whole army. They have no pieces left. Okay. At that point, Simon tried one last desperado, one last trick, which is bishop takes. He's hoping that he can attack both rooks, do a little double attack, get them both, and catch up in ice cream. But no. At this point, we have a very nice move that finishes the game. I would suggest you pause for 3 seconds and try to find it yourself. Black to play and win. 3, 2, 1. If you say queen b7, you're totally correct. Only after this do we have a very nice double attack, combining the nail pawn and the cheese around the king with the poor undefended bishop. Only after this move can we pick up that bishop and nail our knight into e3, finishing the game. So as you can see, Petrosian squeezed all of White's forces. The queen had to go back and forward. The rook never really got to come out. The bishop was squeezed and had to give away a lot of points just to get out of this coffin. And the king never got out of here at all. It felt like Black was playing White in this game because Black got the center and followed all the opening principles, kept a nice wedge pawn, and clamped that fianchetto bishop. So I hope you can play like Petrosian and squeeze your opponents in the same way.